Lana, looking around the council chamber. The 50-odd races looked uncomfortable as they waited. The ambassador of the Narration stood at the podium. By every account of her people's greatest minds stated that he and all his race should be enslaved by now, and yet here he was despite all calculations. What's more, he was asking for a race. They met while at war with the Xander race, to be allowed into the council. The Narration had stated that these humans, as he called them, had apparently been the ones to help them win the war, and what more, all they asked for in return be introduced to the rest of the council. Odd, she thought, for a race to have effectively thrown a war of annihilation into a complete victory for the would-be loser, and only ask for an introduction was absurd. The humans are a kind, helpful race and are eager for peace. I and my race do believe that the human race will offer many wonderful things to the council and the galaxy as a whole. HFY spoke, glancing about to the room, his eyes landing on her. She felt like he wanted to say something, but continued on his speech, to quote a human phrase, that they will seek out life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness with an energy that will leave us dizzying. But I am not their ambassador, so allow me to introduce Ambassador Davion Smith to the stand, HFY said, and he gestured to the door. Almost no cue, the door opened, and a human walked in, dressed in textiles that covered most of this form. Not that impressive, she snickers to herself. It was barely her height, only about 6 units tall. 4 limbs ended in fingers and a patch of red fur on his head. Smooth, soft-looking skin resting on what she could assume was an endoskeleton. She reached down for her translator. Of course she would need it to understand this human. Thank you, Ambassador Thalsnik, the human said in Galactic Common. Oh, it speaks, she thought, and thank you for taking the time to speak to me, esteemed members of this council. I am here this cycle to request membership to this grand body so the Terran Union would gain the support of this council. It said as it curled communication orifice at them. Friendly signal, her translator informed her. I will be frank and forward. Humanity's first steps into the stars was not a good one for us. He shifted slightly, discomfort. Good, it knows its place. We had stumbled into a war. The war was between the Narration Star Conclave and the Xander Empire. It was a mistake. We had no hand in the war. It paused again, sadness. However, the Xander Empire had refused our attempts to rectify our mistake. And so, we began to defend the small part of this great galaxy that we had claimed. We believe that in time this war will end, and we could call out and clear the air. It glanced over to her left. Hate, what is it looking to? She followed it gaze. It was affixed on the Xander ambassador. Is he cowering? She asked inwardly. The Xander were a proud warrior race, more than a match for most races, not so much hers, but most of the races at the council. Yet it was, a Xander shrunk down, tucked in his neck and folded the frills of the crown. Even in hopeless engagement with her people, the Xander soldiers didn't react like this, and to a new race to the galaxy. Fools, she scoffed to herself. This race was like no other race that hadn't come before. The human continued. We, the Terran Union, have found war amongst the stars, and we feel only sorrow. To see such wonder and yet be crushed by disappointment is terrible. When the Narration came, we believe ourselves doomed. We awaited their ships to attack and prayed to our goddess for deliverance for this fate. Its gaze shifted to the Narration ambassador. Camaraderie. Its friends with the Narration, they are doomed. And yet the Narration asked if we needed help. We found hope that day. And so, humanity made a singular vow that day, and in one voice asked them to take us to the stars. Humanity is still in the beginning stages of FTL, and we are still mastering shield technology. Our few ships, the ones we have, are being retrofitted to support these new advancements made with the help of the Narration. However, we have to ensure that 2 things about humanity is made clear, and it is not without reason. That reason applies to both of what I would like to address before this council. It said, sorrow. Humanity has by 2 things, 2 messages we would like for you to understand. Before I state what they are, I would like to address why they are so. It plugged in a data chip into the podium and moved it hand, sending her and everyone a file. Humanity has laws in regard to warfare and how it should be conducted. We humans don't like war. We believe that it is in everyone's best interest to agree to the document I have just sent you. Oh, how nice, a new toy for the Empire to shred at home, she muttered. Beep, beep, and someone has agreed to its requests. Let's see. She looked at the document and rubbed her eyes in amazement. The first signature was from Xander. Beep, beep, and then Larashi. This document is a rectified agreement to the terms of war and how it should be conducted, amended to include all sapient life. I will summarize as it is long. In essence, it states that the only people to be attacked or harmed in war are to be solely combatants, and attack against non-combatants is a breach of these rules. Furthermore, any use of the later stated forms of war are also in breach of these rules. In the event that either of these rules are broken, the offended nation can disregard this rule and engage in total war. It stopped again, taking a long pull from its water. Also, with our armed forces, we have a role called medic. These soldiers are to be considered non-combatants and are not to be harmed. If one is harmed or attacked, no mercy will be shown to the attacker or to his SKU. It stopped regiment. It looked around the chamber as others read the document, and so I will lay before the reason for this document. During the war between the Xander and Larashi, an orbital defense cannon fired on a Xandran scout ship, believing it to be an asteroid on a collision course with our colony. On the planetoid YS-5-3, Ganymede, it exclaimed, "Pain, it is in distress over a colony." Weak, she shuddered. The colony soon learned of their mistake and contacted our home world and began to learn all we could form their databank. When the Xander fleet arrived, a message was sent to them, and it read as such: "We deeply regret the loss we have caused and hope that you do not look badly upon humanity. We ask for your forgiveness and ask that you show mercy." This message was sent 4 times as their fleet approached our colony. We did all we could with our limited technology. Grief, pain, anger, hate. The Xandran fleet ignored all hails. Its eye drifted off and glassed the colony from orbit. It roared into the chamber. "We humans do not want to fight because we believe that the stars held the promise of peace. We lost 2,000 souls that day, and we loathe the Xander for what they did." She leaned over to the Galavrck ambassador. "Oh no, it's anger," she said with a chuckle, which the Galavrck shared in kind. The human ambassador took a deep breath, eyes like cold etherglass and calm as he released his breath. "I suppose you are all curious as to why I am so angry, so allow me to explain. As you all know, YS-5 is a gas giant in the space sector YS-9-2. YS-3, Earth, is humanity's home world." The room busted to shouts and roars. Almost every ambassador was on their feet at this revelation, and she understood why. Humanity are Deathworlders. Her adrenal glands were already pumping when she heard, but something struck her. The Larashi ambassador invited them. The only reason the war had begun was because the last Deathworlders they meet nearly destroyed their race. So why invite them? The room calmed down. The human continued. "I understand and respect your fear. However, humanity has as much interest in war and conquest as a young Larashi has for swimming. Humanity has learned from its world, a harsh and sometimes unforgiving place, the value of life. To us, every single life, regardless of what form it takes, is sacred. We have shed our warlike mentality when we stepped to the stars. However, to our dismay, we found a galaxy at war. And so, I shall move on to our only 2 statements to this galaxy. The first is simple: never again. This is it. As for why we choose it is 2. The Xander killed 2,331 souls on Ganymede. The Larashi had stayed our hand against the Xander. At the final hour, as the Larashi fleet over Zingran, they pleaded for us to not become the monsters we saw in the Xander. And so never again will we stay our hand. Never again will we show mercy at the final hour. Never again will we allow someone to kill our civilians. It roared again, before taking a deep breath, and the second statement is more complex, but I will elaborate in a second. We haven't forgotten. Lana sat in her seat. Every nano unit of her being screamed at her to run. But why? It can't be the human. Her kind has dealt with Deathworlders before. She felt her skin clench together to protect her from an unseen predator. This statement is from our armed forces, and to be frank, it is more for the protection of your nations than ours. It said in a calm, collected coldness that her translator said was truthful. Though your technological level is much higher than humanity and our fleet is still growing, I am afraid to inform you all that humanity's understanding of warfare and how war is to be fought is far more advanced than any of your races. In fact, the tactics and battle strategies you use and openly deploy we read about in our history. And those battles were fought 1,500 Terran year ago. On a death world, truth, it is mad, she thought. To think that they kept fighting was insane. The battle line and tactics her people employed were used due to how well they are with the weapons they used. She glanced down to the document still open on her terminal and began to scroll down it. Also, the human ambassador said, the weapons technology that this Galactic Council deems the standard weapon of war, to us is a high-tech relic of a bygone era. Had you come when the France Revolution happened, we would have loved them. However, as it stands at the moment, we can deploy far more devastation weapons and tactics than you. And so, I state again, we haven't forgotten. If you come for the Terran Union, you will find no battlefield you muster on, no rows of Terran linemen ready to trade laser fire, no cannonade to fire upon you as you march to our line. You will be fighting us as we had fought when our planet began to die on us. The chamber was still. It was unnerving. She looked to the Xander ambassador, only to see he had shrunk so much in his seat that he was practically falling to the floor. Then she looked to the Narration. His feathers stood on ends, his eyes wide and snout raised ever so slightly. Joy, he was happy. She could not let this human's insult to her people's way of war go unanswered. And she gathered her thought, how dare you? A booming roar came from the Galavrck ambassador. You dare to come to us, offer us peace, and then in the same cycle insult our institutions of war. He stood up. You dare to enter here and dictate to us who can and can't be killed in war. He boomed as he stepped towards the human. You dare to challenge us with war, to threaten us? The Galliver towered over the human, his forearms behind his back, ready to strike the human. This will do. We can watch and learn, and then after the Galliver start fighting, we will strike. She giggled. It would be easy to form a tactic after the opening battles of this war a few times. IDO, bellowed the human almost as loud as the ambassador. I dare because I know war. I have witnessed the war Xander unleashed. I dare because I see the wars you wage. I have seen the loss of life you waste. I dare because I have felt the sorrow of a parent losing their kid, of a husband losing their partner. I dare because in this place you stare and bellow at the last colonists of New Hope. I dare because I have nothing to lose here, and neither do my people. The Galavrck stepped back. I demand the rights of war, he said. The Galavrcks demand to be the ones to subject these lowly humans, the ambassador said, looking over his shoulders at the council. Does anyone challenge my right? He called. Noon raised their hands. Lana looked to the Narration ambassador. He sat shaking his head, and then to the Xander, who was, as the translator stated, was praying for the Galavrck. And then she looked to the human. It had curled back his Orpheus and revealed a row of sharp fangs, such a predatory display, like the kind she saw at the zoo from fearsome predators of her people's past. A chill ran up then down her nervous system. Then it is to be a war between humanity and the Galavrck? The human asked like a seasoned warrior would ask his battle clan. And what will be the terms of engagement? We will tear and rip your people, your males killed, the females sold as slaves on our worlds to be used, and younglings tossed from airlocks into the hungry void. We will show a war you can't imagine, weapons that will rend your worlds to bleed, and war that will consume your people. And we will rid the galaxy of another death-world race of vermin, yelled the Galavrckan. The human looked to its right and then back at the Galavrck, and in a calm voice with that wide predatory grin said, You sure you don't want to sign that document before we start?